In the rugged wilderness of Yellowstone, where survival depends on strength and instinct, something happened that no one could explain. A mother grizzly bear, injured, weak, and desperate, turned not to another adult for help, but to her own cub. What the little bear did next was so extraordinary that the world stopped to watch. This is not a story of power, but of love, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. The morning began like countless others in the northern valleys of Yellowstone. The sun stretched pale gold fingers across the ridges, lighting the frost-tipped grass. Steam curled from the river, and somewhere in the distance, the bugle of an elk echoed like a trumpet of life. Mara, a mother grizzly known to rangers for her size and her resilience, lumbered through the meadow with her only cub, a yearling named Tahu. He was still small for his age, with a coat darker than hers, and eyes wide with curiosity. Every step he took mirrored hers, his paws landing almost in rhythm with the deep prints she left in the soil. They were searching for food, roots hidden under frozen ground, the remains of salmon along the riverbank. Winter had been long and merciless, and though spring's thaw had begun, hunger still gnawed at them both. Mara was slower now, her ribs faintly visible beneath her thick fur, but she pressed on, driven by instinct. Keep moving, keep teaching, keep her cub alive. Then it happened. As they crossed a slope dotted with loose stones, Mara's front paw slid. The earth beneath her gave way in a small landslide of gravel and soil. She tried to regain her footing, but her weight carried her down, tumbling until her body struck a fallen log with a sound that split the silence. Tahu froze, his breath catching. He scrambled down toward her, dirt flying beneath his claws. Mara lay on her side, chest heaving, a low moan escaping her throat. When she tried to rise, her hind leg buckled beneath her. The impact had left it useless, trembling under her own weight. The cub reached her, pressing his head against her shoulder. Mara lifted her eyes, pain burning in them, and released a sound that was not a growl, not a roar, but something between a whine and a plea. She was asking. Tahu didn't understand at first. He circled her, nudging with his nose, pawing at her flank. Mara shifted, groaning, her muzzle brushing against his side as if urging him forward. Her eyes fixed on him, desperate, filled with something no ranger's notes could ever capture. Trust. For the first time, the mother wasn't protecting her cub. She was asking her cub to protect her. On the ridge above, 2 wildlife photographers had been tracking the pair for weeks. Through long lenses, they captured every moment. The fall, the plea, the cub's trembling hesitation. One whispered, "She's begging him." She's actually begging her own cub below. The cub pressed against his mother again. Then, with a squeaky grunt, he trotted toward the tree line. His instincts had been sharpened by the lessons Mara had given him. He knew where she found roots, where streams hid fish, where the dens of ground squirrels burrowed. Tahu was going to try. Mara laid her head down on the cold earth, watching him disappear into the brush. Her body shuddered, but her eyes did not close. She had given everything to keep him alive. Now, against all the rules of the wild, she was counting on him to return the gift. For the first time in Yellowstone's recorded history, a cub was about to attempt what only a mother was supposed to do: save the life of the one who gave him his. The forest swallowed Tahu as he darted into the shadows of the pines. His paws slapped against damp soil, his ears twitching at every noise. Normally, he would never have wandered this far alone. Mara had always warned him through gentle nudges and low growls. Stay close. Stay safe. But now, the rules had changed. Behind him, his mother lay broken on the slope, her low moans chasing him like echoes. Something inside him, a pull deeper than instinct, pushed him forward. She needs me. The cub's nose worked furiously, combing the air for the familiar smells Mara had taught him to recognize. Berries, roots, small prey. He paused at the base of a fallen tree, sniffing along its bark. Beneath, he caught the sharp, earthy scent of ground squirrels. His stomach growled, but this wasn't about him. He pawed at the bark, scratching, digging until the earth broke open in chunks. A squirrel darted out, squealing. Tahu pounced clumsily, his paws too large for precision, but by some miracle his claws snagged the creature's tail. A quick shake, clumsy but determined, and the animal fell still. Tahu froze, chest heaving. He had never hunted alone before. The weight of what he held felt enormous, not because of its size but because of what it meant. Proof that he could provide. With the squirrel dangling from his mouth, Tahu bounded back toward the slope. His small body quivered with exhaustion, but he pushed on until Mara's outline reappeared through the trees. She was still there, chest rising shallowly, eyes watching. When she saw him return, dragging prey for the first time in his life, a soft rumble escaped her throat. It was weak, broken, but filled with pride. Tahu dropped the squirrel beside her muzzle and nudged it with his paw, squeaking in the only way he knew how. Eat. Mara sniffed, her tongue flicking weakly across the fur. She tried to lift her head but faltered, collapsing again. The cub panicked, nudging harder, pawing at her shoulder. Mara's eyes locked on his again, pleading, urging. She wasn't asking him to succeed just once. She was asking him to keep trying. Above on the ridge, the photographers whispered furiously, their cameras clicking in bursts. He just brought her food. The cub. He hunted for her. Their voices trembled. They knew they were documenting something extraordinary, something that blurred the line between instinct and love. Tahu turned back toward the forest, determination stiffening his small body. The world seemed larger now, heavier, but also clearer. He knew what had to be done. He would bring more. The second attempt was harder. The storm-wet ground sucked at his paws as he dug along a root bed, pulling up stringy fibers Mara had once shown him. He dragged them back, mud clinging to his muzzle, laying the roots in front of her as if offering treasure. Mara sniffed again, her weak tongue pulling a strand into her mouth. Slowly, painfully, she chewed. The cub's heart raced. It wasn't much, but it was something. He squeaked again, pressing his head against her muzzle as if to say, "Hold on." The hours passed, marked only by the rhythm of his runs into the forest and back. Each time, he returned with something new: roots, insects, even a half-crushed frog from a puddle. Each time, Mara took what she could, her breaths steadier for a while. But the valley wasn't safe. As the sun began to dip, a shadow moved at the edge of the tree line. A coyote, drawn by the smell of blood and weakness, padded closer, eyes fixed on Mara. Tahu froze, his small body bristling. His instincts screamed for him to hide, to flee, but his mother was behind him, unable to stand. The cub planted himself in front of her. His legs trembled, his fur stood on end, and a squeaky growl bubbled from his throat. The coyote paused, confused. It expected prey, not defiance. Tahu bared his tiny teeth, swiping clumsily with his paw. From the ground, Mara gathered what strength she had left. A deep, guttural roar burst from her chest, a sound weaker than usual, but still carrying the authority of a mother. The coyote yelped, startled, and melted back into the trees. Tahu turned, pressing his head against Mara's face again, his small chest heaving. He didn't know if he had scared the predator off, or if his mother's voice had done the work. All he knew was that they were alive, still together. Night crept over the valley, stars pricking the dark sky. Tahu curled against Mara's chest, his small body pressed against her larger frame, keeping her warm as best he could. She lay still, her breaths slow but present, her eyes fluttering closed. For the first time, it wasn't the mother sheltering the cub. It was the cub holding on for her. Dawn came slowly, pouring pale light into the valley. Mist clung to the grass, and the air carried the damp chill of early spring. Tahu blinked awake, his small body stiff from sleeping pressed against Mara. Her chest rose and fell shallowly beneath him. Near the river, his nose caught a new scent, sharp, oily, promising. Fish. He padded to the water's edge, watching shadows dart beneath the surface. Mara had shown him this once, her huge paw slamming into the current to throw a salmon onto the rocks. Tahu mimicked the motion, plunging his paw into the stream. Water splashed, soaking his fur. Nothing. He tried again and again, each attempt ending in failure. At last, he stumbled backward, panting. Then, luck intervened. A salmon, already weak from the upstream fight, drifted too close to the bank. Tahu lunged clumsily, teeth catching its tail. With a fierce shake, he dragged it onto the rocks. The fish flopped violently, but the cub held fast until it went still. Pride swelled in his chest. He grabbed the salmon in his jaws and ran, water dripping from his fur, mud caking his paws. When Mara saw him return with the gleaming catch, her eyes softened. She tried to lift her head, but could not. Tahu dropped the fish at her muzzle, squeaking encouragement. With effort, she pulled small bites into her mouth. For the first time since her fall, a trace of strength flickered in her. But survival never allows long victories. As the sun climbed higher, shadows stretched at the edge of the clearing. 2 coyotes appeared, lean and restless, their eyes locked on the fish's smell. They crept forward, lips curled. Tahu froze, fur bristling. His tiny body shook, but he stepped in front of Mara again. The coyotes tested him, darting closer, snapping their jaws. Tahu snarled, a sound more squeak than roar, but his stance was unyielding. He swiped his paw, striking one across the nose. The coyote yelped, retreating briefly. The other circled wide, angling for Mara. From the ground, Mara forced a roar through her pain. The sound was ragged but fierce enough to echo through the trees. The coyotes faltered, ears pinned, their courage unraveling. After a tense moment, they turned and vanished into the brush. Tahu collapsed against her chest, heart hammering. Mara lowered her head, touching his back with her muzzle. Even broken, she was proud. Afternoon brought another test. Humans. The pair of photographers who had witnessed her fall returned, their lenses glinting in the sun. They whispered furiously, snapping images. "The cub's feeding her." "He's actually protecting her," one said. But their presence was not invisible. Mara smelled them. Even weak, she rumbled low, a warning. Tahu turned, small body tense, glaring in their direction. The men hesitated. One lowered his camera. "Maybe we're too close. If she charges, even injured." They stepped back, guilt written on their faces. From their ridge, Daniel Hayes, the veteran ranger, watched with binoculars. His chest tightened at the sight of the cub's determination. "That little one, he's doing everything a grown bear would do," he murmured. The day dragged on, each hour measured by Tahu's frantic trips into the forest and back. He returned with berries, with scraps of root, with whatever his small paws could find. Each offering was placed gently at Mara's muzzle. Each time, she ate what she could, her breathing steadying. By sunset, exhaustion pulled at the cub's body. He curled once more against Mara, his small frame pressed to her side. He had survived predators, hunger, and even humans that day. But tomorrow would bring more challenges, greater dangers. As darkness crept across the valley, a wolf's howl echoed from the distance. Tahu lifted his head, eyes wide, ears twitching. He pressed closer to Mara, trembling, as if silently promising, "I won't let them take you. Not tonight. Not ever." For the first time, the cub understood what it meant to carry another's life. Tahu didn't know about odds or statistics. He only knew his mother needed him. He pressed his nose to her cheek, then turned toward the forest, fur bristling. His instincts screamed to hide, but something deeper, something learned from Mara, told him to stand. By mid-morning, the pack appeared. 6 wolves, lean from winter, their coats ragged, eyes sharp. They moved with a predator's confidence, fanning across the clearing in a half circle. Their leader, a gray male with a scar across his muzzle, stepped forward, lips curled back from white teeth. Mara tried to rise. Her roar tore through the valley, but her hind leg buckled instantly, dropping her back to the earth. Still, she dragged herself half upright, placing her body between the wolves and her cub. Tahu squealed, darting to her side, then leapt forward a step. His tiny growl cracked the air, comical against the wolves' menace, but fierce in its intent. The wolves slowed, taken aback. This was not the trembling prey they had expected. The standoff crackled with tension. Every breath hung visible in the cold air. The gray male paced, testing the line. Mara snarled again, her teeth bared. Tahu mirrored her, his small body trembling but unmoving. Then the wolves lunged. The first charge came from the flank. A younger wolf sprinted in, teeth snapping for the calf. Tahu spun, swiping with his paw, his claws scraping the wolf's muzzle. The predator yelped, startled, skidding back. The cub's squeaky roar followed, thin but defiant. The gray male pressed harder, darting closer, snapping at Mara's injured leg. She roared, striking with her paw, claws carving deep lines in the soil. The force of her anger slowed him, but it was Tahu who surprised them all. He darted forward, ramming his small body against the wolf's shoulder. It was clumsy, desperate, but it made the wolf stumble. On the ridge, Claire gasped. He's fighting them. He's actually fighting." Daniel's throat tightened. "That cub doesn't know fear. He only knows love." The wolves regrouped, circling tighter. Their breaths came in sharp puffs, their eyes locked on the trembling cub. They would strike again. And then fate shifted. The crack of a rifle shot split the air. Not a bullet. Daniel had fired a warning round. The blast echoed across the valley, startling birds into flight. The wolves froze, ears pinned, their eyes darting toward the ridge. Another shot followed, this one closer. The pack faltered. They weren't afraid of one bear, not even two. But humans, they had learned to fear them. With frustrated growls, the gray male barked once, and the wolves retreated into the tree line, vanishing as silently as they had come. The clearing fell still. Tahu collapsed beside Mara, panting hard. His small chest heaved, his eyes wide but shining. Mara lowered her head, touching her muzzle to his back. Her breath was shallow, but her pride was fierce. For the first time in his short life, Tahu had not only followed her lead, he had defended her. On the ridge, Daniel lowered his rifle, his chest tight. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "That little one is rewriting everything we thought we knew," she whispered. As the sun dipped low, the valley seemed to hold its breath. Mara was still weak, still broken, but her cub had stood against death itself and lived. The world was beginning to take notice. Not just the rangers, not just the photographers, but soon, everyone. The bond between mother and cub had become something larger, a story of survival, love, and defiance against the impossible. By the fifth day, the valley no longer belonged just to the bears and the trees. It belonged to the world. The two photographers who had witnessed Mara's fall had finally sent their images to an editor in Bozeman. By sunrise, those photos had spread across news sites, then across the globe. One in particular, Tahu standing in front of his collapsed mother, down in the clearing, Tahu continued his relentless duty. He foraged, he returned, he pressed food against his mother's muzzle, urging her to eat. Each act of love was now captured by strangers, their cameras clicking, their voices whispering awe. They didn't see the exhaustion in his small frame, the way his paws bled from digging. They only saw inspiration. Mara sensed them. Her ears twitched at every drone's whine, every murmur carried by the wind. She rumbled low, a warning that the humans ignored. For her, they were no different than the wolves, another threat too close to her cub. On the ridge, Daniel's radio crackled with orders from headquarters. "Crowd control priority 1. Secure the perimeter. No civilian contact with the bears. Do not intervene unless absolutely necessary." Claire lowered her binoculars, disgust heavy in her voice. "They're treating it like a spectacle." Like a show, Daniel sighed. The world sees a story. We see survival. They don't understand the difference, but the difference mattered most to Tahu. That afternoon, exhaustion caught him. After hours of searching, he returned empty-pawed, stumbling toward Mara. He collapsed against her chest, too weak even to squeak. Mara shifted, her muzzle brushing his fur, urging him up. Her cub couldn't stop. Not now. Not while she still depended on him. The photographers on the ridge lowered their cameras, their eyes wet. For once, they didn't speak. What they saw was no longer a photo opportunity. It was raw, unbearable love. Suddenly, a commotion erupted on the far side of the clearing. A tourist had strayed too close, climbing down from the ridge with a camera slung around his neck. He muttered, "Just one shot." Just one close-up. Daniel shouted, his voice like thunder. "Back! Get back now!" But the man ignored him, creeping closer. Mara lifted her head, her weakened roar shaking the air. The calf startled awake, scrambling to his feet. The tourist froze, realization dawning too late. The matriarch's fury, though broken, was still a force. Daniel fired a cracker round, the blast exploding above the clearing. Birds scattered. The tourist dropped to the ground in terror, scrambling back up the slope. The herd of onlookers gasped, the air electric with fear. Tahu pressed against his mother, his small body shaking. Mara's eyes found his, filled not just with pain, but with a plea. "Stay strong, my son." The world had wanted a story, but now it saw the truth. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was survival on the edge of disaster. That night, as rangers cleared the roads and silence returned, Daniel wrote in his logbook, "The cub has done more for his mother than any ranger could. He is her strength. But the question remains, how long can a cub carry the weight of the world?" Mara slept fitfully, her breath ragged, her body trembling. Tahu curled into her side, eyes open, watching the stars. He didn't know about headlines or cameras or crowds. He only knew one thing. Tomorrow, he would rise again. For her. The sixth day began with a deceptive calm. The valley shimmered under a flawless blue sky, the sunlight warming the wet soil from the previous night's frost. Birds returned to the trees, and the river whispered as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Mara and Tahu, the calm was fragile, a surface stretched too thin over chaos. Mara's strength wavered. Her breathing grew heavier, and each attempt to rise left her trembling. Tahu, sensing her weakness, darted out again and again, gathering roots, insects, and anything edible he could manage. His paws were raw now, scraped and bleeding, but still he worked. He no longer acted from instinct alone. He acted from love. On the ridge, Daniel and Claire watched with tired eyes. The news coverage had only intensified. More crowds arrived each day, despite ranger warnings. That morning, Daniel spotted new faces, men carrying larger cameras, their gear heavy with tripods, microphones, and satellite packs. Documentary. At the last possible second, fate shifted again. A deafening blast tore through the valley, not from a ranger rifle, but from the herd of bison grazing farther upstream. Spooked by the wolves' howls, dozens of massive shapes thundered into the clearing. Dust erupted under their hooves, sunlight glinting off their horns. The wolves froze, startled by the sudden tide of muscle and earth. Tourists screamed, stumbling back to their trucks. Cameras fell, forgotten. The wolves scattered, dodging the onslaught, retreating to the safety of the trees. Only the gray male lingered, snarling at Tahu one last time before melting into the shadows. The ground shook as the bison stampeded through, their force scattering every threat. And then, as quickly as they had come, they were gone, dust hanging like smoke over the valley. In the silence that followed, Tahu pressed against Mara, trembling. She lowered her head, touching his back with her muzzle. Her eyes glistened, not with fear, but with something deeper. Gratitude. Pride. On the ridge, Daniel lowered his rifle with shaking hands. Claire whispered, "The cub. He never flinched." He stood his ground against an entire pack. Her voice broke. "He's more than instinct. He's love in motion." But the victory came at a cost. Mara's breathing grew shallow, her strength draining faster now. Even with food and Tahu's efforts, the injury was claiming her. Daniel clenched his fists. "If we don't intervene soon, she won't make it." Headquarters had already warned them. No interference unless the balance is broken. But looking down at the cub, still pressing against his mother, still searching for ways to save her, Daniel's heart ached. The balance had already been broken, the moment the world had entered the valley with cameras and drones. As dusk fell, the crowd thinned, but the rangers stayed. The stars emerged one by one, cold and distant. Tahu curled against Mara again, his body quivering with exhaustion. She nudged him weakly, her breath warm against his fur. For the first time, she didn't look like a protector. She looked like a mother asking for one last promise. "Don't give up on me." The world had watched him forage, fight, and face predators. But now, the test ahead was greater than all of them. The choice would no longer be his alone. Somewhere deep inside, Daniel made a decision. He closed his logbook with finality and looked at Claire. "Tomorrow," he said, "we step in." Hook to final chapter. With Mara's life hanging by a thread and the world's eyes still fixed on them, the Rangers face a choice. Let nature take its course, or intervene and risk changing everything. The ending will decide not just Mara's fate, but how the world remembers Tahu's courage. The seventh morning broke in silence. Frost glittered across the meadow, the kind that looked beautiful but bit deep into bone. Mara lay still, her breaths shallow, her body shivering. Each rise and fall of her chest seemed like it might be the last. Beside her, Tahu stirred. His small body ached, his paws raw, his stomach empty. But when he saw her eyes open, weak, clouded, but still searching, he squeaked softly and pressed his head against her muzzle. She rumbled faintly, the sound broken but clear enough. "I'm still here. Don't stop now." Up on the ridge, Daniel and Claire had already made their decision. They had packed crates, sedation gear, and a sling, knowing the risks of interfering in the wild. But as Daniel watched the cub's determination, a lump caught in his throat. "He's done everything a son could do," he whispered. "Now it's on us." Claire nodded. We can't let the world celebrate this story while watching it end in tragedy. By mid-morning, the valley stirred with activity. The rangers descended carefully, keeping with ropes and careful strength. The rangers lifted Mara onto a sling. Her body looked enormous against their frames, but they worked with practiced precision. Tahu darted around them, pacing, never leaving her side. When they placed her in the crate, he pressed his nose to the bars, whining. The journey out of the valley was long and jarring. Trucks rumbled slowly, tires crunching over gravel. From the back, Tahu's cries echoed through the canyon. Mara's breaths remained steady, shallow but present. Claire sat in the bed of the truck, her hand resting against the crate, whispering, "Hold on, Mama. He needs you." At the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center on the park's edge, veterinarians moved swiftly. X-rays revealed a fractured leg and deep bruising across her ribs. The injuries were serious, but treatable. With sedation, splints, and rest, Mara had a chance. Through it all, Tahu paced outside the pen, his small body restless, his eyes never leaving the place where his mother lay. The staff considered separating him, but Daniel insisted. He's kept her alive this long. He's part of her healing now. Days turned into weeks. Mara slowly regained strength, first lifting her head, then eating on her own, and finally testing her weight on the mended leg. Each milestone was mirrored by Tahu, his squeaks growing louder, his playfulness returning, his eyes brighter with every step she took. News of their recovery spread as quickly as the story of their struggle. The world watched live feeds from the center, millions holding their breath at every update. Donations poured in for conservation. Children drew pictures of Tahu and Mara, sending them with letters that read, "Thank you for showing us love is stronger than fear." At last, the day came. The rangers opened the gate at the valley's edge. Mara stepped forward, her legs still stiff but strong enough. Tahu bounded at her side, darting ahead, then circling back, his energy renewed. The world's cameras stayed behind the lines this time. Silence reigned as mother and cub walked into the wilderness, side by side, disappearing into the forest where their story had begun. Daniel closed his logbook for the last time. He wrote, "This was never about survival alone. It was about love. Pure, defiant love. A cub taught us that family is not about strength, but about refusing to give up when everything says you should." Claire wiped her eyes, whispering as she watched them vanish into the trees. He saved her. She saved him. And together, they saved us too, reminding us what it means to care. The valley was quiet again, but it carried a new weight. It wasn't just the home of a grizzly and her cub. It was the birthplace of a story that had touched the entire world. If this story inspired you, remember, love is the greatest survival skill of all. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this with someone who needs hope today. Stories like Mara and Tahu's remind us that even in the wild, compassion is what keeps the world alive.